should probably go on my other account. Why does my... So I'm reading Basic Theology, Chapter 17. The existence of angels. When areas of theology are slighted, this will likely be one of them, at least in standard books of theology. One has only to note the amount of space devoted to angelology and angelology. One has to only note the amount of space devoted to angelology. How do you pronounce this? Angelology. Yeah, angelology. It just looks weird. One has only to note the amount of space devoted to angelology in standard theologies to demonstrate this. However, in the last years of the 20th century, there has been an increasing interest in the subject as well as in Satan and demons. Articles, books, and TV programs featuring angels, though more often warm and fuzzy than theologically accurate, have helped generate this interest in angelology. Nevertheless, only the Bible gives us totally accurate information about angels. Even Calvin was cautious in discussing the publicity given to demons and their activity. Although people may deny theologically the existence of an order of beings called angels and demons, practically their reported activities seem to make it impossible to deny their existence. Thus, on the one hand, man's bias against anything supernatural rules out in his mind the existence of angels, while on the other hand, activity that he cannot explain rationally makes their existence seem necessary. So, human knowledge. Man does not have the knowledge to judge what the makeup of the universe is. He has no knowledge apart from observation way to know if that makeup would or would not include an order of creatures like angels. Further, he has no predisposition to assume that it does include angels, for his natural predisposition is anti-supernatural. In addition, his experience would not incline him to consider the possibility of angels, and his faith in his own intellect would compel him to seek other explanations for phenomena he cannot readily understand. If you think of this as rage bait, the truth must trigger you. Welcome, neighbor.
Oh, hello.
Hello, what would you like to say?
So, one of my problems with Christianity is the preservation of the Bible.
There's no problem with that. It's been verified 98% accurate, so...
How are you gonna say it's been verified 90% accurate when the first piece it's been researched, the first small tiny piece of the Bible front that we have today is 150 years after Jesus. It's called the P52. You can look it up online. It's as big as a notepad. The this is the New Testament, not the Old Testament, by the way. This is the New Testament, not the Old Testament, by the way. I want to make that thing clear.
What?
The P52 is the oldest piece of the Bible of the New Testament.
This is totally
And
irrelevant.
wait, let me finish, and then you can speak.
But this isn't relevant to anything.
I'm talking about the preservation of the Bible.
Okay. And I'm interested why?
Because why should I believe in something that hasn't been...
Why do I give a shit what you believe? You can go to hell.
You're here trying to... Aren't you trying to change people's
you prove that
ideas?
Jesus made identity claims. Can you rationally deny what Jesus said about himself? That's what
You're just talking about something else now. You're just completely avoiding what I'm trying to say.
I'm not interested in a history discussion with a God hater, okay? So can you rationally...
I'm not a God hater. I believe in God.
Really? So what's your rational reasoning for denying Jesus being your God?
My rational reason of Jesus not being my God is because how can a human be God?
We're saying God incarnated as a human. What's the issue with that?
Okay, but does he still have the attributes of God?
Uh huh.
All of his attributes.
He
Then why
lived
did he not know everything all the time?
because he
Because Jesus said in the Bible, even though I don't think the Bible should be used as a proper source because it's not been uh
so
preserved,
by
he
what
says he doesn't know the day of the hour, only the Father does. So how is he God? If God knows everything all the time.
he's just talking there about like his role, like it's not his job to
What
tell.
do you mean? Okay, but you said he's fully God. If he's God, he should be able to know everything all the time.
Wait,
And if
but
he doesn't
he's
know
not
the day of
talking
the
about
hour
his
and only the
knowledge.
Father does, that means he's
Okay,
not God.
can you stop? He's not talking about his knowledge. He's talking about his role. His role isn't to tell us when the hour.
Okay, but if he's God, he's supposed to
Goodbye.
be all
Bye.
knowledgeable.
Good luck in hell. Welcome, neighbor.
How are you?
I'm doing well
Why do you think Christianity is objectively proven?
because to objectively prove anything, Jesus would be a necessary precondition as a foundation upon which you prove things.
But where's the proof? Because if you're saying the proof is the Bible is the claim. So, like, I was actually trained in debate in high school and college. We were
Oh,
taught that you can't use your claim as evidence. So, if you say, my God is real because my holy text says so, when someone says, prove it, you can't say, my holy text says so, because that's what we call a circular argument.
the problem is though we're talking about a framework through which to interpret or any observation or evidence. So the Christian worldview is a framework to interpret evidence, right? I'm saying that the Bible is like my verification principle. So how do you think you verify a verification principle?
Have to independently test it again. The Bible is the
You don't know
claim,
your
so
text.
then you have to say, well, my material, my evidence is separate from the Bible.
You're not
I,
under,
I did some type of scientific hypothesis.
you're a debate journalist, right?
I'm
So
sorry.
why are you echoing? We verify something as true or false with a verification principle. I'm arguing that the Bible is the necessary verification principle without which you wouldn't have a coherent verification principle. So do you have a verification principle that's coherent?
If you're trying to flip the argument and say that the Bible isn't the claim, it's the evidence, then we're back at square one. Where's the claim?
You're not. We need a verification principle to say what's
Right,
true.
but I'm saying that again. So in debate,
What's your verification principle? Mine's Jesus.
right. And where did you get Jesus from? The Bible. That's the claim.
Historical
So again,
fact. It's a
in
historical fact.
per who? We
He's a,
don't really
he's a
know.
human.
Nothing in the Bible has been proven. Like, yeah, Jesus might have
This
existed
is a
as a person.
historical fact. So I'm appealing to a historical fact. This human existed in history, and that human
I
is the
mean, yeah, we're pretty sure that Jesus existed, but we can't prove that he walked on water. We can't prove the 2 fish, 5 loaves
do
of
you
bread
prove
story.
anything if Jesus isn't God? Then how do you prove anything? What's your verification principle?
That's what I'm asking you.
Okay,
That's the
bye.
question. You can't prove
Bye.
it.
Bye. What a moron. Welcome, neighbor.
Hello, how we doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Been pretty busy. Been quite warm today, it has.
What would you
What's it
like
like
to
out
see?
in America?
America, number
Yeah,
one.
what? Has it been warm, I guess? I don't know.
It's been like a lot of freedom. Um, yeah, it's been really America. What would you like to say?
Just trying to understand your formula to your conclusion. Sounds like you're going in a circular direction with your logic, so to speak. It's like the Munchausen's trilemma, so to speak, where you're just going in a circularity in your conclusion.
Well, how do you think We have to have standards to prove something, right?
What would you say is your standard then?
I said the standard is revealed by God and that it's in the Bible. That's the standard.
So that's the standard. That's the claim, though, isn't it?
It's the standard. So if my standard is wrong, you don't agree with my standard, right? So you must have a better standard. So what's your standard?
Well, it's hard to compel with a concrete
You
fact of
okay?
reality, I guess.
Are you a coward?
Excuse you?
Are you a coward?
How am I a coward?
Because I asked you what your standard is, and you cowardly ignored my question.
I
So, do
answered
you
you.
want to
I
like grow up
answered
here
your
and answer
question,
what's your
Peter.
standard?
Reality.
Bye.
The fuck?
Good luck in hell. Welcome, neighbor.
Welcome, neighbor.
What would you like to say?
The world is ruled by Satan. He doesn't have ultimate authority, but the world is mostly ruled by Satan.
Well, aren't you fun at a party?
I mean, it's close to the topic, no?
So we're talking about limitations. Man does not have knowledge to judge what the makeup of the universe is. We have no knowledge apart from experience. Um, that if the makeup of the world would not include an order of creatures like angels. Or that, sorry, we have no way to know that if there is or isn't angels. Further, man has no predisposition to assume that it does include angels, for his natural predisposition is anti-supernatural. In addition, his experience would not incline him to consider the possibility of angels, and his faith in his own intellect would compel him to seek other explanations for phenomena he cannot readily understand. Ram has fingered the limitations of human knowledge in this very clever way. Mankind has no handbook titled A Guide to All Possible Creations. It has no information about creation apart from the data afforded by this creation. In other words, man's limited knowledge does not permit him to conclude there are no such beings as angels. Biblical revelation. If one accepts the biblical revelation, then there can be no question about the existence of angels. There are three significant characteristics about that revelation. First, it is extensive. The Old Testament speaks about angels just over 100 times, while the New Testament mentions them about 165 times. Of course, any truth has to be stated only one time in the Bible for us to acknowledge it as truth. But when the subject is mentioned as often as angels are, then it becomes that much more difficult to deny it. Second, angels are mentioned throughout the Bible. The truth about them is not confined to one period of history or one part of scriptures or a few writers. They do not belong to some primitive era. Their existence is mentioned in 34 books of the Bible from the earliest, whether Genesis or Job, to the last. Third, the teaching of our Lord includes a number of references to angels as real beings. So to deny their existence is to cast doubt on our Lord's veracity. The actual details of the biblical revelation are, of course, important, but while surveying them, it is important to keep in mind that these three characteristics of the nature of that revelation. We shall examine first the amount and spread of the biblical facts, then the teachings of Christ. In the Old Testament always presents angels as real, objective, existing creatures. In no way are they considered illusions or figments of the imagination. In the 34 occurrences of the word in the Mosaic writings, angels always appear as real creatures who do specific things in character with their service as messengers, which is, of course, the meaning of both the Hebrew and Greek words for angels. For example, Abraham ate and conversed with angels. Many of the references in the Pentateuch and in Judges to the angel of Yahweh, who seems to be deity. An angel executed the judgment on Israel after David wrongly took a census of the people. Isaiah refers to seraphim and Ezekiel to cherubim. Daniel mentions Gabriel and Michael. Zechariah mentions angels frequently as agents of God and interpreters of visions. In Psalms, angels are depicted as God's servants who worship him and who deliver God's people from harm. In the New Testament, in addition to what our Lord taught about angels, the writers of the New Testament also affirmed their real existence. The Gospel writers relate their ministry to Christ's birth, life, resurrection, and ascension. In the record of the book of Acts, angels were involved in helping God's servants, opening prison doors for the apostles, directing Philip and Cornelius in ministry, and encouraging Paul during the storm on his voyage to Rome. Paul, the writer of Hebrews, Peter, and Jude all assumed the existence of angels in their writings. About 65 clear references to angels occur in the Revelation, more than in any other single book of the Bible. Clearly, the New Testament furnishes clear, undebatable, and abundant evidence for the existence of angels. In the teachings of Christ, angels ministered to Christ in the wilderness after his temptation by Satan. And of course, no reporter was present at that temptation, so his truthfulness is behind the account. He taught that the human state in the resurrection would be like the angels, for example, non-procreative. Angels will separate the righteous from the wicked at the end of the age and will accompany the Lord at his second coming. Even without adding the references to Christ's activity in relation to demons, there is sufficient evidence that he believed in the reality of angels. Usually the last things critics of the Bible wish to abandon are the words of Christ. How, then, do they handle this evidence that Christ believed in the existence of angels? Some say he actually deceived. He believed they existed, but actually they do not. Others affirm that he accommodated his teaching to the ignorant beliefs of the people of his day. In other words, since they believed in angels and demons, he taught in the same vein, though he actually knew that angels did not really exist. But some of his references to angels cannot be explained in that way. See Matthew 18:10. Or is it sometimes claimed that the writers of the Gospels added these references to angels since they believed in them? There is nothing to prevent that story of literary criticism from robbing us of other, perhaps even all, of the teachings of Christ. Of course, there is another option, and it is the simplest and most obvious. Christ knew that angels exist and reflected that knowledge in his teaching. The creation of angels. The fact of their creation. Angels are created beings. This means they did not evolve from some lower or less complex form of life. This is reinforced by the fact that angels do not procreate. When they were created as angels. The agent of their creation. All things were created by Christ. Specifically, angels were created by him. The time of their creation. The Bible does not undebatedly state the time of their creation. They were present when the earth was created, so their creation had to be prior to the creation of the earth. The state of their creation. It's holy. Originally, all angelic creatures were created holy. God pronounced his creation good, and of course, he could not create sin. Even after sin entered the world, God's good angels who did not rebel against him are called holy. These are the elect angels, in contrast to the evil angels who followed Satan in his rebellion against God. In addition to being created holy, all the angels were surrounded by holiness. Their creator was absolute holiness. The atmosphere in which they lived and served was, until the sin of Satan, without the imperfections of taint and of sin. Creaturely, angels are creatures, not the creator. Yet they are a separate order of creatures, distinct, for example, from human beings. As creatures, they are limited in power, knowledge, and activity. Like all responsible creatures, angels will be subject to judgment. Chapter 19, the nature of angels. They are personalities. Personality means to have personal experience. Thus, we mean that angels have personal existence and possess the quality or state of being persons. Commonly, the essential facets of personality are considered to involve intelligence, emotions, and will. Angels then qualified as personalities because they have these aspects of intelligence, emotions, and will. This is true of both the good and evil angels. Good angels, Satan, and demons possess intelligence. Good angels, Satan, and demons show emotions. Good angels, Satan, and demons demonstrate that they have wills. Therefore, they can be said to be persons. The fact that they do not have human bodies does not affect their being personalities, any more than it does with God. To be sure, the knowledge that angels possess is limited by their being creatures. This means they do not know all things as God does, yet they seem to have greater knowledge than humans. This may be due to three causes. Angels were created as a higher order of creatures in the universe than humans are. Therefore, innately they possess greater knowledge. Angels know more about God than humans do. Angels gain knowledge through long observation of human activities. Unlike humans, angels do not have to study the past. They have experienced it. Therefore, they know how others have acted and reacted in situations and can predict with a greater degree of accuracy how we may act in similar circumstances. The experiences of longevity give them greater knowledge. Though they have wills, the angels are, like all creatures, subject to the will of God. Good angels are sent by God to help believers. Satan, though most powerful and cunning in carrying out his purposes in this world, is limited by the will of God. Demons, too, have to be subject to the will of Christ. The personality of angels means that they are not merely personifications of abstract good or evil, as some have considered them to be. This includes Satan, who is also a personality, not a personification of man's collective idea about evil. 2, they are spirit beings. Angels, demons, assuming they aren't fallen angels, and Satan belong to a class of beings that may be labeled spirit beings. Angels are said to be ministering spirits. Demons are called evil and unclean spirits. And Satan is the spirit that now works in the sons of disobedience. As spirit beings, they are immaterial and incorporeal. People have long wrestled with the meaning and ramifications of such a concept. Some Jews and early church fathers understood angels as having some kind of airy or fiery bodies, though in the Middle Ages it was concluded they were pure spirit beings. The tendency to ascribe to angels some sort of body grows out of the supposed impossibility of conceiving of a true creature without a body. Also, it seems clear that angels are not omnipresent, but have spatial limitations. Sometimes they were even seen by human beings. All of this seems to press for a conclusion that angels must have bodies. However, The scripture explicitly call angels and demons spirits. In Matthew, a lot of references. Though God is also a spirit being, this does not mean that angels are infinite in nature as God is. Rather, they are finite spirit beings. Neither does their spirit nature forbid their appearing to human beings. Usually they appear as males, though possibly the women of Zechariah are angels. They have appeared in dreams and visions, in special unveiling of their presence, and to people in a normal conscious waking state. In heavenly visions, they are described by superhuman characteristics that are quite different from other human-like appearances. Some angels have wings. 3, they are immortal and do not propagate. The number of angels is and always will be the same. The Lord taught that angels do not propagate, baby angels, and they do not die. However, the wicked angels will be punished in a place of separation from God. They are higher creatures than men. The writer of Hebrews said that when our Lord became incarnate, he became for a little while lower than the angels. Although there are problems connected with the writer's use of Psalm 8 in this passage, it does seem clear that the incarnation placed Christ in a position lower than the angels, though of course this was only temporarily true during the time of Christ's humiliation on earth. This is because man, who was created in the image of God, is lesser than God by nature. He is also lower than angels since they belong to a class of superhuman beings, who are stronger than man by nature and, unlike man, not subject to death. They were originally holy beings. The Bible gives little specific evidence about the original state of the angels, though we know that when God finished his work of creation, he pronounced everything to be good. Jude 6 also indicates that originally all the angels were holy creatures. Some were elect and others sinned. Presumably, all might have remained in that original state of holiness, and those who did not rebel were confirmed forever in their holy state. In other words, those who successfully passed the probationary test will always stay in that original holy state. Those who failed are now confirmed in their evil, rebellious state. To sum up, though there are similarities between angels and deity, and between angels and men, angels are a distinct class of beings. Like deity, but unlike men, they do not die. Like deity, they are superior in strength to men, though they are not omnipotent as God. Like both deity and men, they have personalities. Like deity, they are spirit beings, though not omnipresent as God is. Men, by contrast, are both spirit and material beings. Angels do not procreate as men do. Man was made a little lower than the angels, and yet, in his resurrected and glorified body, man will judge angels. Chapter 20, the organization of the angels. The number of angels. The angels constitute an exceedingly large number that cannot be counted. That's the sense of myriads, which is used to describe the number of angels in Hebrews 12:22 and Revelation 5:11. Indeed, the latter verse states that there are myriads of angels. How many this might be is left unspecified, though some have suggested that there are as many angels in the universe as the total number of all human beings throughout history. There is no increase or decrease in their number, whatever it is. 2. The fact of their organization. The scriptures speak of the assembly and council of the angels, of their organization for battle, and of a king over the I can't pronounce this word. Demon locus? A king over the demon locusts. I thought it was like one word. Uh, they are also given governmental classification, which indicate organization and ranking. Unquestionably, God has organized the elect angels, and Satan has organized evil angels. An important practical point emerges from this. Angels are organized, demons are organized. Yet Christians, individually and in groups, often feel that it is unnecessary that they be organized. This is especially true when it comes to fighting evil. Believers sometimes feel that they can go it alone, or expect victory without any prior organized preparation and discipline. It is also true when it comes to promoting good. Believers sometimes miss the best because they do not plan and organize their good works. Welcome, neighbor.
How are you?
What would you like to say?
We could just go. Let's start at the top. Christianity is objectively proven. What is the best evidence to establish that?
Um, Basically, we argue if you deny God's revelation, um, you kind of end up poop creek without a paddle because
Can I pause you for a second though?
sure.
The reason I pause you is because you're kind of shoehorning in the implication that a God exists, right? Wouldn't the first thing you would need to establish is that a God exists first before you get on to denying his revelation, because that would be a second claim.
It's my position that God revealed himself in history and creation. And so that's the only way we can know God is if God is a person who speaks to us. Because you can't like science your way to God, and you can't logic your way to God.
Okay, I agree. But how do we know that so for one, like, how do you establish that a God exists? What's the best evidence for that?
Because it's necessary for like logic, science, or morality to make sense.
Okay, and how did you establish that it's a God is necessary for that?
Because we just assume the opposite. Like if we deny the revelation of God, then I can demonstrate how like facts would be impossible. We couldn't have facts. We couldn't do science.
So without a revolution of without the revelation of a God, 2 plus 2 would no longer equal 4.
Correct. Yes.
Can you explain why that's true?
Um. Yeah, because like 2 plus 2 equals 4 is like an unchanging truth that applies to everyone. So maybe the easiest way to explain this is like if I say 2 plus 2 equals 5, you would say I'm wrong, right?
Well, I could demonstrate why you're wrong. It wouldn't be my opinion. I would just demonstrate that adding two things up would not equal 5.
But for something to be wrong, like something has to make it wrong. See what I'm saying? But like
Right. And we have numbers. Adding 2 and 2 is equals 4. We don't need any outside information other than the simple of adding 2 sticks to two more sticks gets us 4 sticks.
you're not getting it. We do because we need like a standard of like right and wrong. Like
We don't, though. Right and wrong are like
wrong.
moral principles, right?
Right, that's what I'm saying. We need ethics. So if
What
it's
does that have to do with mathematics, though?
because
Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
if it's not actually wrong for me to say 2 plus 2 equals 5, then it's just like you can't without like God or the Bible, you couldn't say I'm wrong. You just have to say I think differently. It wouldn't be wrong.
No, I would say like
Why would
it's
anything be
2
wrong?
plus 2 is 4. That it equals 2 plus 2 equals 4. There's no morality basis. There's no
It's not
outside
wrong.
information that matters.
Well, what you're saying though, you're saying it's not wrong. So if there's no morality, then I can say 2 plus 2 equals 5, and I'm not wrong.
Morality has nothing to do with
Of
mathematics.
course it does.
Give me an example.
I just did.
But that makes no sense, host.
How
I'm
does that
being
not make
honest.
sense? You're acting like these rules apply to me. Why do those rules apply to me?
No, I'm saying the rules of mathematics apply in mathematics.
Do they
You
apply?
don't
Are they
have the
binding? Do I
morality.
have to follow them?
So if I can elaborate, do you understand that the common, saying that mathematics is a universal language, right?
Uh-huh. That means it's objectively binding. So
Right.
you're
So
rejecting
are
that it's
other
objective.
countries, other societies with different cultures and different moralities and different God beliefs, they all agree that 2 plus 2 equals 4, right?
Okay, but that's irrelevant
I don't know how.
because you're acting like logic is objectively binding. Like I have to follow logic, but that only makes sense if the God of the Bible provides like a moral absolute as to why I ought to be logical.
I think you keep trying to bring in like
I'm not trying to bring.
you're bringing in logic and morality to something that has absolutely nothing to do with.
Are you
You're
kidding
talking
me?
about
Are there
apples
rules?
and squares.
Do we have to follow mathematical rules to get to 2
Uh-huh.
plus 5? There's rules, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes,
do rules
mathematics, yes.
do rules function if there's nothing enforcing those rules? Do they function without enforcement? If
What
I
do you
write
mean
down,
enforcement? Like
if I write
again,
down
you
a piece of paper, anyone on TikTok is not allowed to lie to me or they go to jail. Does that rule function or does it not function? Because no one enforces that.
again, you are conflating two very different things. 2 plus 2
I'm
equals
not.
4 doesn't
You're
need
running
to have
away.
enforcement
You
behind
say
it.
dude, you're a coward. You're running away.
One
from
thing
the
is
truth.
demonstrably
You're a
true,
coward.
and one
No,
thing
just straight
isn't.
up answer this, coward. Do rules require rule enforcement? Do rules function if nothing enforces the rule?
Not in mathematics, no.
Okay, you're lying. I'm just not gonna.
How am I lying?
Because mathematical rules wouldn't function without rule enforcement. It's obvious. So you're just. You're
Okay,
just a
so can you
coward.
give me an example? Can you give me an
No, I don't
example
want.
of a
I
mathematician?
don't want.
Can-
No, because honestly, at this point, if you're this big of a coward, you can't be honest about simple math arithmetic. You deserve to go to hell. You're a coward.
I,
Yeah, go to hell.
I'm a coward, so you're going to
Yeah, go
drop
to
me.
hell.
Hello,
Welcome.
how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm a fallibilist, so I believe that certainty isn't guaranteed.
Okay. So you're not certain that the law of non-contradiction is true?
There's degrees of certainty. We can have high
Are you
certainty
certain
of
one plus
things,
one
we can
equals
have
two?
low certainty of things.
Are
But
you
always
certain
there's
one
a
plus
cap.
one equals two?
Hold on, can I finish what I'm saying?
I don't really care. I just want to know if you're certain if one plus one equals two.
To a high degree, but also I could be like in a brain in a vat. I could
Uh-huh.
be in Rene
So
Descartes' demon world. So
here's if I can't even convince you one plus one equals two, I'm kind of not interested in talking to you.
well, do you agree that you could be under like Rene Descartes' demon spell? That
No,
everything that you, okay, why?
because that's absurd.
Okay, how would you know that you aren't?
Because Jesus said that everything is real and that he created me.
How do you know what is real?
Because Jesus told me.
Where does he say it?
What? In the
Where
Bible.
does he say that? Where
In
does it
the
say in the
Bible.
Bible? Are numbers real?
The numbers real? Yeah, in the mind of God. They're abstract objects that exist in the mind of God. So I don't know if you're not. So you think one plus one might equal three. You're not certain one plus one equals two.
No, I didn't say that. I said I'm a fallibilist, so I have
Are
a
you
high degree of
certain?
certainty, but I could be a brain in a vat.
Are you
This
certain
reality
one
could
plus one
be
equals two?
simulated. I can be under the spell of a
Are
demon.
you certain one plus one equals two?
I have high certainty.
So it
But I'm
could,
always willing to admit, like, I could be wrong. I could be in a
so
false
1 + 1
reality.
might equal 3.
Um, Not that it would equal three, but that this reality,
You're not making
what
any sense.
governs the reality,
Okay,
that could be all be an illusion.
you're not making any sense. All right. Well, I can't reason with you. You're just goofy. Your thinking is like really messed up.
Well, I mean, modern epistemologists have a consensus of fallibilism.
Yeah, that's why we need to submit to God's revelation to have a coherent theory of truth. So that's why you're in this goofy world where nothing's true. So
So
that's
the
the
majority of
difference.
epistemologists are goofy.
Yeah, if you read the book Modern Epistemology by Nicholas Everett, he says there's no foundation for truth in science or math. They have no foundation, and so there's no point of epistemology because you can't. It doesn't work. There's no functional coherent.
I
What?
can respond to that. I can respond to that.
How do you have a foundation for epistemology?
Yeah,
You do.
the mind.
It doesn't work
Why?
because you can't defeat skepticism.
So if I can't defeat skepticism, but I'm bringing forth the fallible argument that is skepticism, then you would be submitting towards skepticism.
But the purpose of epistemology is to defeat skepticism. So if you can't defeat skepticism, then there's no point to your epistemology.
Well, I'm not a skeptic, and I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Like the brain in the vat thing that you were talking about. Do you have a? I have a defeater for that in Jesus, right? Do you?
Yeah,
You don't. You don't have a defeater.
I'm granting you that. I'm saying you could say Jesus, but I'm saying that you can't have 100% certainty. And we were talking about this yesterday. You agreed with me that the nature of God is ineffable.
Sure. If you're not 100% certain on logic, then you can't debate. You're contradicting yourself by arguing.
No, because we can make
Bye.
reasonable assertions.
No, you're contradicting yourself. You don't understand. If you're not certain that logic is true, you cannot sit here and use logic and argue as if it's binding and true. It's a contradiction. Welcome, neighbor.
Hello. So I would love to hear why, or not just why, but how Christianity is objectively proven.
Because you need like a revealed, rational, eternal mind to make sense of things like logic, science, morality.
Why?
Because we have to have like a standard to prove something, right? Or a verification principle. And the standard is either going to be just invented by a human mind or
Mhm.
it's gonna be revealed by the rational, eternal mind of God. It's the only way we can have an objective standard. Otherwise,
Why can it not be invented by the human mind?
because if the standard for how we prove anything is just made up by humans, then that means all proof, all truth is just invented. It's just fantasy. It's not real.
You don't think that human mind can come up with something objective that we can compare reality to?
You'd have no objective reference point. You just have subjective reference points.
Why not?
Because human minds are subjective. What do you mean? You need a mind outside of humans, like the mind of God.
So you think back before humanity had invented logic, right? Like back before a lot of the
We didn't
logical
invent
laws
logic.
came.
We discovered logic because the logic comes from God.
Sure, that is a claim that you're making.
Uh-huh.
And the proof that you'd offer is you don't think humans can come up with it, right?
It's a contradiction to say they did.
How?
Because logic is unchanging and eternal, and humans are finite and changing.
What do you mean that logic hasn't changed? The idea and how we perceive logic has
law of
changed a lot over
non-contradiction doesn't.
times.
The law of non-contradiction, that doesn't change.
And 1 + 1 = 2. That doesn't change because but we invented it that way. If we defined 1 as something other than 1, it would change.
Because if comes from a human mind, if the truth comes from a human mind, it couldn't be unchanging. It would be subject to change because human minds change.
So when we discovered let's say law of universal gravitation, right? Or when we put a number to it, big G, when we put a number to that, did that come from a human mind?
No.
It is a facet of our universe. This is just how things work in our universe, right?
Numbers can't come from a human mind. They need the mind of God.
Numbers can't come from a human mind?
Yeah.
Okay, prove that.
Well, do you think human minds make things real?
No, numbers are how we
Yeah.
numbers in science are how we categorize the
The mind of
universe.
God can make things real, so only the mind of God can make a number real. The human minds can't be a source for math.
What do you mean by real?
Actual. Not
Okay,
fantasy.
that's just saying real in a different way.
Not fantasy. Actual. Yeah.
Okay, but you do understand that like
Definitions are circular.
science or numbers are how we categorize reality. They're not like a part of reality.
They're abstract objects.
I wouldn't. Sure, yeah. So they're not, you would put it, real.
No, they're real in a conceptual sense. They're not real in a physical sense.
Mm-hmm.
But
And they were conceived by humans.
no, because humans can't make things real.
Humans cannot make things real.
Yeah, do you think that your mind makes things real and that you're God? Is that what you believe?
I think that my mind can come up with real things, yes.
It can't make things real. You can rearrange things.
No, I can observe the real world and make observations on that. And we as humans have developed systems to categorize those observations and show relationships between these observations we make.
Problem though, before you observe the world, logic has to be true.
No.
Okay, so the first law of logic is the law of identity. How could you observe something that doesn't have an identity?
Do you have to know that law of logic?
The first
To
law of
observe it.
logic is the law of identity.
You have to know that, though.
Sir, can something be observed that has no identity?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I feel like I'm talking to a flat earther at this point. To say that you can observe something without an identity is insane.
And I think I'm talking to somebody who presupposed God and can't get away from that.
Well, okay. And you're observing things that don't have an identity, and that makes sense.
And you think you're not smart enough to come up with something real. So
Yeah, I don't believe my mind makes things real. I think
it doesn't make things real, but it can observe real things in abstract based
you are
off of
trying
that,
to argue
right?
that it makes math real. It can't.
Math is a categorization method. You understand that, right?
Math is used to design bridges. So,
It is a relationship and categorization method.
It's real enough that you trust your life that the bridge isn't going to collapse when you drive your car over it.
Does math
that
make
real?
the bridge work?
Is it real?
Does math make the bridge
Do
work?
you really, in reality, trust math to hold your car from collapsing?
No. Math cannot hold my car from collapsing.
That is just a lie. What a ridiculous. So he drives his car over the bridge, but he doesn't believe that the math that designed the bridge, that if the math is incorrect, right, the bridge will collapse. But he doesn't believe that's real. That's not real. Are you kidding me? How is that not? You trust your life on something that's a total fantasy pretend? Who trusts their life on fantasy? That guy's a liar. What a dirty, rotten snake liar. Liar. Oh, yeah, I believe in this pretend fantasy math to save my life. My life is saved by fantasy. I'm an atheist. Why don't you ask? I'm not a Bible scholar. Ask ChatGPT. The ranking of angels, the archangel. Only Michael is designated as the archangel or high-ranking angel. Although the Bible nowhere speaks of other archangels, there are evidently other high-ranking angels. When Paul says that the voice of the archangel will be heard at the translation of the church, he does not seem to feel the need to name that archangel, which supports the conclusion that there is only one. In the Old Testament, Michael appears as the guardian angel of Israel, who will particularly help Israel during his time of great trouble yet to come. He leads the angelic armies of heaven against Satan and his hosts of evil ones. The reference to Jude 9 to Michael's disputing about the body of Moses indicates that Michael had something to do with the burial of Moses, that he had no power within himself to pronounce judgment on Satan, and that as a creature, even though a mighty one, he has to depend on the greater power of God. The chief princes. The phrase referring to a group of superior angels underscores the fact of ranking among the angels. Of this group of chief princes, Michael apparently is the foremost one because he is the archangel. The apocryphal book of Enoch names Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Jeremiel, and Uriel as the four principal angels who were privileged to stand around the throne of God. It also numbers 7 angels as archangels. Government rulers. Rulers or principalities. These words, used 7 times by Paul, indicate an order of angels, both good and evil, involved in governing the universe. Authorities or powers. This likely emphasizes the superhuman authority of angels and demons exercised in relation to the affairs of the world. Powers. This word underscores the fact that angels and demons have greater power than humans. Place of rule. In one place, demons are designated as world rulers of this darkness. Thrones or dominions. This designation emphasizes the dignity and authority of angelic rulers and God's use of them in his government. Cherubim. Cherubim constitute another order of angels, evidently of high rank since Satan was a cherub. They seem to function as guardians of the holiness of God, having guarded the way to the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. The use of cherubim in the decoration of the tabernacle and temple may also indicate their guardian function. They also bore the throne chariot that Ezekiel saw. Some identify the 4 living ones of Revelation 4:6 as cherubim, though others feel these represent the attributes of God. Representations of the cherubim will also be part of the millennial temple. Seraphim. All we know about this rank of angelic beings is found in Isaiah. Apparently, the seraphim were an order similar to that of the cherubim. They acted as attendants to the throne of God and agents of cleansing. Their duty also was to praise God. Their description suggests a 6-winged, human-like creature. The word may have been derived from a root meaning to burn, or possibly from a root which means to be noble. Particular angels, Gabriel. Mention has already been made of Michael because of his high rank. Gabriel also appears to be a high-ranking angel, though he is not designated as an archangel as Michael is. His name means hero of God, and his function was to bring important messages from God to several individuals. In the Aramaic Targum, he is the angel to whom was ascribed the finding of Joseph's brothers, the burial of Moses, and the slaying of the armies of Sennacherib. Angels with special responsibilities. Certain angels are designated in connection with a particular function they perform. In Revelations, there's an angel who has a power over fire. There's an angel of the waters, an angel of the abyss, an angel who binds Satan. Angels associated with future judgments. 2 of the 3 series of judgments of the Revelation are announced by angels. When angels sound the trumpets, the judgment of Revelation 8 through 9 begin, and the 7 last plagues are poured out on the earth by angels. Angels of the 7 churches of Revelation. Each letter is addressed to the angel of the church, and those angels were seen in the right hand of the risen Christ in the vision of 1:16 and 20. It is uncertain whether these are angelic beings or the human leaders of those churches. Though the word angel clearly means messenger, it can refer to a superhuman being, that is, to the guardian angel for each church, or it may refer to a human messenger, that is, to the human leader, pastor of each church. Angel of Yahweh. As discussed in chapter 40, the angel of Yahweh is Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. The angel spoke as God, identified himself with God, and exercised the prerogatives of God. Appearances of the angel has ceased after the incarnation of Christ, which supports conclusions that he was the pre-incarnate Christ. Chapter 21, the ministry of angels. Basically and essentially, good angels are servants. God sends them for service or help of believers, and in so serving, the angels function as priestly messengers in the temple universe of God. In relation to God, angels' primary ministry is to worship and praise him. They praise him, they worship him, they rejoice in what he does, they serve him, they appear before him, they are instruments of God's judgments. In relation to new epics, angels appear to be unusually active when God institutes a new epic in the sweep of history. They joined in praise when the earth was created. They were involved in the giving of the Mosaic Law. They were active at the first advent of Christ. They were active during the early years of the church. They will be involved in the events surrounding the second advent of Christ. In relation to the ministry of Christ, at his birth, predication, Gabriel predicted his birth. Announcement. An angel announced his birth to the shepherds and was then accompanied and praised by a multitude of angels. Oh, this is about Christ, right? During the life of Christ, an angel warned Joseph and Mary to flee Egypt to escape Herod's wrath. They gave direction. An angel directed the family to return to Israel after Herod died. Ministration. Angels ministered to him after his temptation and in his stress at Gethsemane. Defense. He said that the legions of angels stood ready to come to his defense if called. After Christ's resurrections, an angel rolled away the stone from the tomb. Angels announced his resurrection to the woman on the Easter morning. Angels were present at his ascension. Mr. Naughty Monk, didn't we just talk? Didn't we talk already?
Yo. Hey. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, I'm a Buddhist.
Okay.
Buddhism is true.
No.
Why?
Because Jesus is this the God of the Bible is the source of logic and existence. So we don't have
I
an
obviously disagree. That's an assertion, not justification.
yeah, but then you're making a counterclaim that something else is the source of logic.
The mind.
So what's the source of logic that's not God of the Bible?
The mind.
That's a contradiction, though.
Why?
Because logic doesn't change and the mind does change. Logic is eternal. The mind is not eternal.
The mind is not equated to the brain.
Goodbye. At Jesus' second coming and his rapture, the voice of the archangel will be heard at the translation of the church. Um, the angels will accompany him at the second coming. Angels will separate the wheat from the tares at his second coming. In relation to the nations of the world, in relation to the nation of Israel, Michael the archangel especially guards Israel. In relation to the other nations, angels watch over rulers and nations and seek to influence their human leaders. During the coming tribulation years, angels will be involved in the administration of God's judgment. In relation to the unrighteousness, angels announce impending judgments. Angels inflict judgments on the unrighteous. Angels will separate the righteous from the unrighteous. In relation to the church, basic ministry, basically, angels help believers. Background ministry. Angels have been involved in communicating and revealing the meaning of truth, which the church benefits from today. Specific ministries. They bring answers to prayer. They aid in winning people to Christ. They observe Christian order, work, and suffering. They encourage in times of danger. They care for the righteous at the time of death. Whether angels continue to function in these ways throughout the present age is uncertain, but they did perform these ministries and may well continue to do so, even though we are not aware of them. Of course, God is not obliged to use angels. He can do all these things directly, but seemingly he chooses to employ the intermediate ministry of angels on many occasions. Nevertheless, the believer recognizes that it's the Lord who does these things, whether directly or through using angels. Notice Peter's testimony that the Lord delivered him from the prison, though God actually used an angel to accomplish it. Perhaps an inscription I once saw in an old church in Scotland states the balance well. Though God's power may be sufficient to govern us, yet for man's infirmity he appointed his angels to watch over us. Probably the statements about angels observing the conduct of redeemed people startle our thinking as much as any of these truths. The reason for their interest in us may stem from the fact that since angels do not personally experience salvation, the only way they can see the effects of salvation is to observe how it is manifest in saved human beings. We are indeed a theater in which the world, men, and angels make up the audience. Let us put on a good performance for them, as well as for the Lord, before whom all things are naked and open. Section 5, our adversary, the devil. Welcome, neighbor.
Yo, hello?
Are you an adult?
Yeah, I'm 19.
What would you like to say?
I was gonna ask you how Christianity is objectively proven.
It's because, like, if we think about what's necessary for facts to be facts, because facts are neutral. Facts are you have to have like a theory to have a fact. So basically, we can demonstrate that all facts require the God of the Bible for there to be a fact. That you can't have a fact without the God of the Bible. So it's proven.
Well, I would say facts exist if they're like objectively like proven and they're like able to be sensed by one of the five senses. I mean, like there's scientific theories, they're not facts. I don't get the argument you're trying to make.
Well, when you appeal to like your senses, sense data, that's empiricism. But empiricism can't prove empiricism. Does that make sense?
Okay, wait. Could you tell me like a fact as an example?
Like the fact to boil water or boil noodles. That fact requires like that objects maintain like identity over time. That there's cause and effect is true.
I'm kind of lost here. I don't get what you're trying to say.
Like every time we boil water, every time the water gets to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils. that's like a pattern in the world. So there has to be like a mind to impose that pattern and order.
Okay, so you're saying that facts existing is like a byproduct of an existing God, and you're saying that because facts exist, there must be a God to create that reality.
Yeah, like because we need an objective reference point. If all we have is human minds, then facts would just be made up by humans. We need God to like interpret facts.
But we humans have created those facts. Reality has existed before us, but we observe those facts and label them as facts. We know that it takes, 100 degrees to boil a cup of noodles?
Well, like
Because we know it.
it's a contradiction to say humans created the facts because facts are supposed to be objective. That's why we need like an objective mind. So we need God to create the facts.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that we observe those facts, and those facts have existed before us, and just because they've existed before us doesn't necessitate the existence of a God.
Yeah, because you need a mind to have a fact, because facts require an interpretation. So God has to be the first interpreter, and then we interpret facts after God because we're made in his image. And if you deny that...
Wait, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry. But so you're saying that flowers having a stem, which is a fact, proves God's existence.
Yes.
I'm sorry, how? I just don't get it. Like, how does that... I don't think it has anything to do with God.
But God's necessary for all facts. That's why.
What does God have to do with plants having stems? Like, they can, like, what... Like, okay, so plants having stems is a natural thing that occurs in the natural world. God is a supernatural being. How is that, like, related?
Well, because the stem is something that it's like it's actual. It's what something has to actualize it. Something has to make it real. Things aren't just real for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like different philosophers would disagree with you. I mean, things may not exist for a reason that you would like, but they just exist to exist. I mean, we have either manifested those things into existence, like a pair of shoes, or those things have evolved over time, like animals.
If there's no reason, then there's no stem. There's no... Because to say there's a stem, you're saying that there's like parts of the world that are connected. Like there's multiple plants that have stems. So what you're saying is there's these parts of reality that are connected to each other because they all share this like attribute or property called stem. They need
Yes.
something to connect everything. That's what God connects everything because he's the source of existence. They all come from God. So God connects them. But if you deny God, now nothing connects them. Now everything is disconnected and disjointed. So when you talk about the stem, it doesn't make any sense because you're not referencing the connection. You're denying the connection.
Well, the flowers share stems, which make them classified as plants. I don't get it. Like, what does that have to do?
Because why would two objects share a property unless a mind intended them to share that property? You think they're just going to randomly share properties for no reason?
Yeah, well, that just kind of stands for natural selection. I mean,
No.
okay, wait, sorry. P Mars, you know how there are many animals that like aren't related to like the dog species that look a lot like dogs, but they're way, way, way far down the family tree and the lineage. That doesn't make them like related or super close to dogs. It's just those traits that fit the dog's environment were also advantageous to the other species environment. That doesn't necessitate them being related.
You're not really like understanding what I'm saying. Just the fact that there's a connection that there's two dogs that share this property called dog. That means something intended them to share that property. Nothing's gonna randomly.
The environment did.
No, that doesn't make sense.
How does it not make sense? Okay, when I say, why do you think the dogs have the appearance that makes them a dog, or the genetic code? Why do you think they have that? Do you think it's because of God?
Yeah, because God has to intend for things to share properties, so there's a connection. If there's no intention behind that, that's like throwing two dice with an infinite. Because anything that exists could have an infinite amount of properties. So
Well,
why
yeah.
would you share the same properties by random? It doesn't make
So,
sense.
P Mars, do you believe in evolutionary biology?
No.
Okay, then, yeah, I would probably drop this argument because it would require me to try to get you to agree on evolutionary biology and why dogs and other species have the traits that they have and have the genetic code that they have to best be suited for their environment. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you if you don't believe that evolution exists.
I mean, it's not just like it could be like colors, right? Like, why do two apples share the same color, red? It has to be intended. It's not going to be. They could be in. There's an infinite amount of colors. They could be any color. Why aren't they just any random color?
Well, I wouldn't say that apples can be any color, but they come in a variety of colors. Yeah, the two red apples are probably of the same type of apple tree. Yeah. I don't get what you're saying. Are you saying that it necessitates a God because God made that apple tree?
Okay.
And that's where the problem is. I don't believe that God made that apple tree. I
Say
think
I had two dice, and hypothetically, the dice had an infinite amount of sides, and I rolled the dice. They're not going to land on the same side because there's an infinite options. It's impossible for them to land on the same side.
Okay, wait. Okay, this might sound like a little random to you, but if you flip a coin, do you think that randomness truly exists? Like, do you think that there's a 50-50 probability that it'll be heads or tails?
Yeah.
Okay, then. Just making sure, because I don't know if you think that there is some sort of destiny throughout a timeline. Like, if a person is about to flip a coin, heads or tails, that the destiny is already made, and that the reality of which the coin goes to heads was made, and therefore there is a 100% chance that the coin is going to be one or the other.
You're not focusing on what I'm telling you.
Well, I don't get what you're trying to tell me, because the last argument that we had,
When
we
look
came
at the
to a
world,
conclusion that you don't believe in evolution, and so I can't explain to you why the dog has the traits that the dog has.
about dude, the point is, it doesn't matter like what it is. It could be anything. We look at the world, we see two objects. They could be anything. It could be cars. It could be anything. We see the two objects share the same property. So an object could have an infinite amount of properties. There's no reason for anything to share the same property by random chance. You see?
Yes, I disagree.
You can't. Think of the dice example. If you have two dice, each dice has an infinite amount of sides, which is impossible. But like hypothetically, you roll the dice. They never can land on the same side.
Okay, so I was going to tell you that there would be a reason for two things to be alike but be not related in any sense.
Because it's like the
just
dice.
each other.
It's like the dice. You're rolling.
But then,
the dice.
with the dog example that you were using earlier, though, I told you that would have to do with evolution, and then you said that you don't.
Understanding. We're talking about the intentionality behind the universe. There's either intentionality or there's not intentionality behind the universe. There's no other option. And
Okay, why do you think the universe has to be intentional? Why do you think the universe
I'm
has
trying
to
to tell you with the dice. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If it's not intentional, that's like taking two dice with an infinite amount of sides, rolling them, and they keep landing on the same side. It doesn't make sense because we keep seeing objects in the universe with the same properties, but they could have an infinite amount of properties. The only reason any properties connect in any object is because of intention. You have to roll the dice. You have to.
I think that it's because they're closely related to each other.
Okay, I don't know. You're just like
No, I
no,
don't get what
I'm
you're
trying to
trying
like
to say,
dumb it. I'm
because
trying to dumb
you're
this
saying that
down.
you don't believe in how everything is relative and how the world is so closely
Do you
related to each
understand
other.
that rolling the dice, you're not going to land on the same side? Do you understand that at least? Does that make sense to you?
With an infinite sided dice, yeah, there is
Right.
like no probability that you're gonna land on the same side multiple
Right.
times.
But if we load the dice, if we rig it and we intend them to land on the same side, they can land on the same side, and that makes sense, right?
I'm sorry. Can you just tell me like the argument you were initially trying to make? I just can't like
This
with
is
this
the
dice
argument.
talk.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna move on because like that was like me trying to make it simple. Oh my goodness. Karuma, are you the guy from earlier who was arguing with Darth? Welcome, neighbor.
Oh, never mind. I'm a drop.
Okay.
Fine.
Why do you want to argue with me? You're supposed to be a Christian. I'm just here arguing against non-believers. Welcome, neighbor. I can't hear you if you swiped off the app.
I really think the claim that there was no slavery in ancient Israel is outrageous, as there are laws in the Old Testament on owning slaves given by your God.
That's not true. If you read the King James Version, the word slave is not in the Bible.
The King James Version of the Bible was made 400 years ago and is heavily edited.
What are you talking about? It's like the first English version.
First English version. Well, actually, I think it was like the third English version. If you actually read any of the Orthodox Bibles, they still have the word slave in there. If you go to any credible Jewish organization where they still have the Torah, Old Testament,
Do you know
they
what the
still have
word
the word
is?
slave in
Do you know
there.
what the Jewish word is that's translated to slave in Leviticus?
You're talking about the King James Version, totally different.
No, I'm talking about the Jewish. What is the Jewish original word that gets translated as slave? What is that word? Do you know it? No.
Worse.
What?
You're talking about a version of the Bible that is totally different than what most people believe in.
Sir, I can't. You're not making sense. I'm getting the feeling like I'm talking to a raving lunatic. Okay. Do you know the original Jewish word that gets translated as slave in Leviticus 25? Do you know what that word is?
No, I don't know what that word is because you're talking about the King James Version. That is a version of the Bible which is
I'm done
about
with
500 years old.
I'm done with you. Mr. Naughty Muck, I don't want to talk to you. I'm delusional. How am I delusional? Where do they grow these people? What the heck? What the? Why are people inviting me to co-host? No. Let's do one more. I don't know. I feel like I have to take a shower after all that atheism. If you think this is rage bait, then the truth must trigger you. By definition, Christianity cannot be objectively proven as it requires faith. That is so dumb. I can't believe how many people say that. Like, that's so embarrassing to say something like that. As if faith isn't based on evidence. Who doesn't base who are these people that live their life without basing their beliefs on evidence? Who does this? This is insane. Welcome, neighbor.
What's up again?
What would you like to say?
Oh, I was no, I was going to ask you about the Christianity is objectively proven. We can start there.
Yeah, it's the God of the Bible is necessary as a foundation to have objective truth, because standards for truth are either going to be objectively revealed by the mind of God, or they're just going to be arbitrarily invented by human minds. So
How did you determine that they have to be objectively true by a mind of a God?
because if they don't come from a mind of a God, they come from human minds, and so they wouldn't be objective.
What's wrong with that?
Because it's
Are they objective? I'm not sure they are.
the standard for truth. If it doesn't come from God, it would be arbitrary, and then all evidence would be arbitrary.
So are the laws of logic and the laws of physics, are those arbitrary?
Well, I think no, because they come from God.
How did you determine that?
Because it's necessary. I just explained this to you.
No, you didn't. You just exclaimed that it's necessary. You didn't tell me exactly why it has to be
I did
necessary.
tell you it's an either or. The standards come revealed from the mind of God, or they're invented by human minds. But if they're invented by human minds, they're arbitrary.
Or they're discovered by human minds, and they're the laws of logic and the laws of physics.
Okay. Well,
goodbye. At what point?
Goodbye.
Yep.
Goodbye. Yep. Yep.
I mean, this is what you do every time.
This is what you do. Yeah. Oh, goodness. No, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Tomorrow. I'm going to go take a shower. I shut them down when it gets hard. No, he didn't. He ignored what everyone keeps ignoring what I'm saying. They just keep ignoring what I'm saying. So, do you want to talk to people that just ignore what you say? They're just rude assholes. I didn't mean to invite you. I'm going to end my life.